So as the Bible opens, you go into Genesis chapter 1, first chapter of the Bible. You find God, the Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit at work. They are creating, they are designing, they are building this world that we live in. And so he's working. 6 days of work. The seventh day, God rests. For 6 days, he designs, builds, creates. Then he rests. And when he creates human beings, he embeds, I believe, this rhythm of work and rest in us. In the paradise, in the Garden of Eden, there was work. All right? Even before the fall of man, it wasn't like Adam and Eve are just sitting back working on their tans, drinking tropical drinks. They are administering creation. They are naming the animals. They are partnering with God in caring for this world. The rhythm is further ingrained, embedded into humans when God codifies it into the law and makes it part of the law of Moses. Women and men are to labor for 6 days. Then they are to rest. They're going to get up. They're going to wake up. They're going to go to work. They're going to build. They're going to create. And on the seventh day, they're going to rest. They're going to have a Sabbath. So from the beginning, you and I, we are created to contribute, to work, to make a difference, and also to make this work sustainable, to make this work even enjoyable. There is rest built into the week. That's the rhythm that God has built into us. And so it's not just that your job, that your work needs you, it's that you need your work as well. So somewhere along the way, the goodness of work then, it becomes contaminated by a number of things, but we see it in the two extremes of the workaholic who lives for their job. All right, so there's that extreme, and then the other extreme is laziness, of course. Let me tell you about a woman you've probably not heard of, Miriam Magala. She used to work for CSI New York, the real thing, not the television show. She used to work for CSI New York, the forensics lab of the New York City Police Department. And while the job may not be quite as glamorous or exciting as television series lead us to believe, it is still pretty important to tracking down criminals. So she was a 24-year veteran of CSI New York, and she was responsible for conducting all sorts of scientific tests to put criminals behind bar or to find the innocent, all right? Now, she did her job, at least as long as the testing didn't involve too much having to walk, all right? Now, you may be thinking, I don't get that. Well, she was a bit of a slacker, to be honest. In fact, her laziness caused really an all-out nightmare for the New York criminal justice system back in 2010, and that's when a police department internal affairs investigation found that she just kind of wasn't doing her job a lot of the time, that she would habitually show up for work in not so much a science-y sort of mood, okay? So consequently, thousands of legal judgments were thrown into question. Specifically, or for example, she was caught switching drug samples because in certain cases, if she switched the samples or switched the labels on the samples, she wouldn't have to walk to the other side of the building. She was caught red-handed labeling as positive a crack pipe that had tested negative for drug residue because she would have had to fill out all sorts of paperwork if she had done it correctly. So her work also involved appearing in court, testifying in front of the judge and jury, and that was a part of the job she actually did pretty well because it involved just kind of sitting for hours. Paul Brown, a spokesman for the police department, said that at this point it looks like it was a lot of either sloppiness or laziness that was involved with Magala's work. Now, the result of all of this laziness is that there's a crisis, right, in New York right now because every forensics case she had ever been involved in is now having to be reviewed starting back in 1986. All of these thousands of cases, and many of them could potentially be overturned because she simply wasn't doing her job. So what is the cost of laziness? She's one example of the harm that can be done by laziness. Normally, though, I think laziness invokes fewer conversations and questions about the cost of laziness than it does evoke jokes, one-liners. I mean, you may have heard the one, what do you call a woman who works as hard as a man? Lazy, all right? Maybe you heard that one, all right? Maybe you've heard, yeah, wow. Maybe you've heard the one, the person who remarked, I like work. It fascinates me. I can sit and stare at it for hours, all right? But when you get behind the one-liners, when you get behind the jokes, you get to this question about the real cost of laziness, not just the economic cost, not just dollars lost, not simply in terms of the morale of the office, but you get into the questions about what it does to the spirit of a person, what it does to the potential of a person created in the image of God, who is living outside of this rhythm that God established from the beginning. The book of Proverbs warns over and over. It warns the sloth. It warns the lazy person. And the first warning that we're going to look at in chapter 6 is the vision of a person who is a chronic napper. Proverbs chapter 6, verses 9 to 11. No nudging, by the way, today. No, I wish Junior was here to hear this. Just listen and receive this word for yourself, okay? That's what we're doing. So chapter 6, verses 9 to 11. How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When are you going to get up from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a bandit, scarcity like an armed man. So here is this individual whose daily to-do list consists of 1, lie down, 2, take a nap, 3, get up, 4, fold the hands for a while, 5, repeat the process, okay? That's kind of the scene. It is a person who is engaging their imagination and finding new ways to kill time, new ways to relax. And the end, according to Proverbs, is scarcity is poverty, okay? Then chapter 26, there's another image. Chapter 26, verse 13. The lazy person claims, I like this one. The lazy person claims, there's a lion on the road. I'm sure there's a lion out there. Now you're thinking, well, I don't get it. The lazy person, the lion, that doesn't make sense to me. What is this about? What it is about is this person is so lazy, they have an incredible imagination. They spend a lot of work actually coming up with excuses of why they can't leave their house and go to their job, why they can't get outside and do yard work, why they can't do anything productive. There's no way I can leave the house today. I'm pretty sure the forecast calls for lions. I'm going to need to stay home. I'm going to need a nap. I'm going to need to surf the web. I'm going to need to play Call of Duty. I got to stay home today. I would love to work, you know. I would love to get out and run errands and be productive today, but I'm pretty sure there's a lion outside, so I'm not budging. Chapter 26, verse 14. As a door swings back and forth on its hinges, so a lazy person turns over in bed. Now, I haven't seen the new movie with Clooney and Bullock, Gravity, but I've seen this kind of gravity at work. This person who feels a sort of gravitational pull, an orbit around the bed, around the pillow. They get up to use the bathroom, they get up to grab a snack, but the bed seems to always pull them right back. It's this gravity at work. Now, so there's the person who is creative, imaginative, comes up with the excuse about the lion or whatever they need to come up with. There's the person who's hinged to their bed. The funny thing is how these drained, fatigued, energy-starved folks find a fresh burst of enthusiasm when someone calls and says, hey, I've got a tea time at the golf course. Or you want to go shopping, you want to catch a movie. All of a sudden, it's like the excuses are gone and the energy is back. It's amazing how that happens. Verse 15. Lazy people take food in their hand, but don't even lift it to their mouth. Man, this fork is heavy. What is this thing made of? Lead? I mean, I can't even lift this thing up to my mouth. Now the author is exaggerating a little bit to make a point. I don't think we've ever met somebody this lazy, but it is the image of someone who has absolutely no motivation. This person has no motivation, no drive. They have difficulty even summoning the wherewithal to feed themselves, brush their teeth, get dressed, take the dog for a walk. The most basic things in life, they just can't get motivated to do it. Next proverb, verse 16. I like this one too. Lazy people consider themselves smarter than 7 wise counselors. They think they're the ones who really have everything figured out. Make the font on the paper for school larger so there's less writing involved. Take the extra long lunch break or coffee break. Show up a little bit late for work. Leave a little bit early from work. Perhaps leave the jacket on the chair at work with the light on in the office so people think you're still there. They've got it figured out. They are the smart ones. The people that show up on time and work hard, they're the dopes. They're the dopes. The unenlightened. I think of George Costanza. You guys who know Seinfeld. This guy, he is, if the writer of Proverbs had watched Seinfeld, his name would be here. All right? Really would. It's like he works for the Yankees, okay, on the TV show. So it's like the time he figures out that if he just leaves his car in the employee parking lot, it just leaves it there all the time, 7 days a week, then the boss will think he's working all of this overtime, or he designs this underneath his desk, hidden from view, an area where he can nap, or the time he figures out that if he tells everyone how stressed out he is, he won't actually have to work. I mean, he's inventing new ways to be lazy, and he makes us laugh because everybody knows a couple of Georges. Everybody's seen this person before. They're the guy that thinks they've got it figured out. They are the wise ones. Lazy people idolize idleness. Now for Proverbs 12:27, which begins to get us thinking about the cost of laziness. It says this: lazy people don't even catch the game or cook the game they catch. You know, the fish or the rabbit, they don't even cook it, but the diligent make use of everything they find. The diligent make use of everything they find. So what is that proverb saying? It's about potential. It's about growth. It's saying that the wise person, the hardworking person, takes what they have been given or takes what they have earned, takes what they have, and they grow it. Take what they have, their area of responsibility, and they improve it. Now, the fool, the lazy person, they don't cook the game they catch. They don't cook the fish they catch. They don't cook the rabbit they catch. Nothing improves under their watch. That meat is just going to end up rotting. At their work, their area of responsibility is in decline. In their home, their marriage is in decline. In whatever area they have some responsibility, some oversight, there is no plan, there is no effort, and maybe, not in all cases, maybe there's not even a desire to see things grow and improve. Now, the final proverb we're going to land in is Proverbs 24, verses 30 to 34, and the author of this proverb is recalling walking down a lovely country lane. There are trees, there are streams, there are gardens, there are farms, and he's going to learn something as he walks down this country lane. Verse 30, I walked by the field of a lazy person, the vineyard of one with no common sense. I saw that it was what? It was overgrown with nettles, it was covered with weeds, its walls were broken down. And as I looked and thought about it, I learned this lesson. A little extra sleep, a little more slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, then poverty will pounce on you like a bandit. Scarcity will attack you like an armed robber. So this walk down this country lane causes the wise writer of this proverb to pause and to think. It is a sad scene. There is this field, there's this vineyard, both of them. They are unkempt, they are overgrown, they are falling apart. Both have owners who are simply too lazy to take care of what they have, and the result is just a vision of neglect, all right? Did they inherit the field? Did they inherit the vineyard? We don't know. Did they receive it as a gift from a friend? Did they receive these properties as a gift from a relative? We don't know. Maybe they bought the properties at some point with some money they had. Whatever the backstory, the bottom line is that they are not motivated enough to take care of what they have, to make it better. In fact, they can't even summon the energy to maintain what they have been given. So neglect is overwhelming their properties. Think about a vineyard for a second. I don't know a lot about vineyards, but think about a vineyard for a second. Somewhere in the past, some person had enough inspiration and enough perspiration to purchase this tract of land, to put a protective wall around it, to take out all of the weeds and all of the rocks, an awful lot of work there, to put in trellises, to select just the right vines to plant, and then to cultivate these harvests of grapes. Someone had all of that inspiration and all of that perspiration. A pretty complicated, a pretty heavy-duty task. The owner of a vineyard was someone who had something of incredible worth and incredible potential, but all of this in the hands of the lazy person, this opportunity, this blessing, is completely wasted. The once beautiful, verdant, fruitful, money-producing vineyard is now overgrown. The scene that the author of this proverb sees is really, it's almost heartbreaking, because someone here has metaphorically won the lottery. I mean, they have been dealt this incredible hand by life. They have been given a vineyard, and this blessing, this opportunity is simply in decay under their watch because they're too lazy to take care of it. All right? Now for the sermon outline. Really quickly, I want you to write down 3 things we've learned from the Proverbs so far and from the book of Genesis. The first one is this, about the lazy person. These are things we've learned. The lazy person fails to cultivate the blessings and the opportunities they have been given. Okay? They have this, they're not taking care of it, all right? And there's the proverb we just read. The second thing is this. The lazy person fails to connect their work to the work of the God who made them. Our God is a worker. He's involved in creating. He's involved in revealing His Word. He's involved in, He's got a universe to run. Our God is a worker. And they're living out of that rhythm. They're not connecting what their work is and the importance of their work to the rhythm that God has established. The third thing is the lazy person fails to consider the long-term cost of their unproductiveness. Chapter 16, verse 11, poverty will come on you like a bandit. Now, apparently, laziness was a problem. You know, when we read the letters of Paul in the New Testament, we're basically getting to read other people's mail. They're Holy Spirit inspired. They speak to us today, but they are addressing very specific individuals and situations in the churches like Corinth and Rome and Ephesus and Thessalonica in this case. The Christians in Thessalonica, in this church, there was a particular problem of laziness among some of the members. And so in 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, Paul is going to write to the moochers in the Church of Christ in Thessalonica. He is basically going to tear into these people, and you'll hear these words, and I think that's an accurate assessment. He's going to tear into these people who are young enough, who are healthy enough to work, but they simply choose not to work. In this case, the backstory is they thought Jesus was going to come back, the second coming, any day now, so why go to work? That's kind of the backstory. But what you need to know is they simply were choosing not to work even though they could have, and so they are getting by on charity from other believers when they themselves could have quite well worked. So listen to how Paul addresses this in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verses 6 to 13. This is from the Message. Paul writes, our orders, backed up by the Master, Jesus, are to refuse to have anything to do with those among you who are lazy and refuse to work the way we taught you. Don't permit them to freeload on the rest. We showed you how to pull your weight when we were with you, so get on with it. We didn't sit around on our hands expecting others to take care of us. In fact, we worked our fingers to the bone, up half the night, moonlighting, so you wouldn't have been burdened with taking care of us. And it wasn't because we didn't have a right to your support. We did. We simply wanted to provide an example of diligence, hoping that it would prove to be contagious. Verse 10, don't you remember the rule we had? They had a little motto when Paul was working there. Don't you remember that? If you don't work, you don't eat. And now we're getting reports that a bunch of lazy good-for-nothings are taking advantage of you. This must not be tolerated. We command them to get to work immediately. No excuses, no arguments, to earn their own keep. Friends, don't slack off in doing your duty. Wow. I think there have been some father-teenager talks that went a little bit like this, perhaps. Couch potatoes, really, in Thessalonica. They are not only failing to cultivate the blessings and opportunities they have been given, they're not only failing to connect themselves with the rhythm of God who is at work in the universe, they're not only failing to consider the personal cost of their unproductiveness, but beyond this, they are a drain on the church. And Paul told them, not okay, guys, not okay. Their laziness is a spiritual problem. Their laziness is a practical problem, as they are weighing down the hardworking, generous sisters and brothers in Thessalonica who are having to pay their tab. Back to the beginning. Back to the Garden of Eden. Beautiful place, full of potential, but it needed to be worked. Adam and Eve are called to carry on with the work God has begun. They're going to cultivate the land, they're going to prune, they're going to harvest, they're going to plant, they're going to need to use their God-given strength, their imaginations, even their relationship with one another, so that they can help their world, their garden, to become all that it could be. So where is your garden? Or better yet, where are your gardens? All of us, and there are several probably. We're talking about your secular work, to be sure, today. We're talking about your family. We're talking about your home. We're talking about your ministry in the church as well. Not all of us are called to, let me put it this way. All of us are called to ministry. If you're a follower of Jesus, you're called to ministry. Not all of us are called to full-time church work. Let's put it that way. Because mostly the ministry of a child of God, is involving the skills that they have, involving the job that they have or the business that they run, is involving the opportunities that they have, the relationships they have, and the heart that they have to serve right where they are. Take the garden they have been given and grow it, cultivate it. Your work as a doctor, your work as a homemaker, your work as a bricklayer, a middle manager, a CPA, your work is part of your ministry, a big part of your ministry. My wife and I got to spend, and I say God, it was an amazing opportunity. We had this opportunity to work in Rio and plant a church there for 10 years, and one of the reasons that we were able to do that full-time was because of a couple, Cale and Tana Powers. Cale and Tana, at the time, they were just out of college. They both graduated from Oklahoma Christian, so they were perhaps mid-20s, newly married people, and they decided that they were going to not get traditional jobs. They were not going to get a mortgage on a house, but to kind of prepare themselves to get a little nest egg. They were going to be a full-time truck driving team. They didn't look like truck drivers, especially Tana did not look like a truck driver, but that's what they did for years. And because they were able to save this money, because they didn't have to pay on a mortgage and everything, they were able to support our work. And they were some of the people that helped us, through their generosity, helped us to work full-time in Rio to plant a church there. Their work was a big part of their ministry. Now, laziness is a sin because at its core, it means living far below the potential, far below the ceiling that God has set for you. It means wasting the garden of potential and possibilities that lie before you that have been given you. It's a sin also because it means that all of the folks who should be blessed by your hard work are not. It's a sin because if you're a disciple, it makes your Lord Jesus look bad. It's a sin because it involves wasting all of the talents and the opportunities and the life God gave to you. And this shrewd investor is sitting back and saying, what are you going to do with my investments? And so it's a sin to waste what He's invested in you. Look, the Lord we love, the Lord that we serve, is a worker. Jesus is a worker, a creator, a builder, a redeemer, and we reflect His image when we work and build like Jesus works and builds. Now think about Paul for a second. I want to go back and talk just about the Apostle Paul for a second. I can't think of anyone outside of Jesus Himself who made as big of an impact for the gospel as the Apostle Paul. I could be wrong on that, but just that's my thought on that. And as far as I know, somebody can correct me on this, but as far as I know, Paul never quit his day job. He was a tent maker by profession. He had a tent making business. As far as I know, he never stopped making tents. He worked, he made money, he had business partners. Before Priscilla and Aquila, you may recognize those names, before they were partners in ministry, before they were partners in the kingdom, they were business associates. And Paul honored the Lord. Paul ministered along with Priscilla and Aquila to people around them, but they had secular jobs. Now, Paul, listen to what he says to this church in not the Thessalonians this time, Thessalonians. Listen to what he says to the Colossians in chapter 3, verses 23 to 25. He tells them, brothers and sisters, hey, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for men, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. So your work, your secular work, air quotes, because I don't think there's a secular component to the life of the disciple. We are salt and light wherever we are, but your quote-unquote secular work is a big part of your ministry, a big part of your witness to the world. Your work is sacred. Now, obviously, if you're running a meth lab or if you're stealing cars, you need to think of a new line of work there. But the Spirit of God speaks through Paul's words and affirms the value of their work. Whatever you do, Colossians. Now, the Colossian Christians must have had all kinds of different vocations, all kinds of careers. And Paul told them that their work, whatever it was part of their worship. And we don't usually think of work, secular work, in theological terms, do we? We don't normally think of hamburger flipping or lawyering or doctoring or lawn mowing or business dealing. We don't normally think of those things in terms of our worship of the living God. But when we do things to the best of our ability, when we work as if we're working for God and not our crotchety old boss or whoever, when we work as if we're working for God, it's good. It's sacred. It's good for us. It's good for those who work around us. It's good for those who benefit from our work. It's good for God. Now, let me put in one footnote here. None of this means, the takeaway today is not necessarily, I need to spend more time at the office. Okay, that's not what we're talking about this morning, necessarily. Perhaps it is for some of you, that's the takeaway. I don't know. Okay? A lot of people have thrown their lives out of balance because they see, oh, the garden, the vineyard I have, that's my job, and so I'm going to work 70 hours or whatever over here. I'm going to be gone all the time. The problem is that's not the only garden they've been given, right? God has given them a spouse. They have a home. They have children. You're out of balance when you're over here throwing yourself into this garden and you're neglecting these others. They involve work. They involve energy. They involve being engaged, just as your secular work does. So here's the thing. As I was thinking about it this week, and you might want to write this one down. I'm not the first one to say this, but the thing today is that many people today worship their work. Work at their play, and play at their worship. Many people today worship their work, work at their play, and play at their worship. And that's out of balance. Some men, some women run away from the important work, from their work as a spouse or a parent or a servant in God's kingdom. They justify it. They rationalize it by constantly saying, oh, I got to put in more hours at the office. The vineyard, the garden of their marriage is in decline. Their parenting is in neglect. So back to the job site, back to the vocation, because that is important. When it comes to our vocations, the Scriptures teach that we not downplay our quote-unquote secular jobs as being unrelated to our ministry, to our service, to our walk as God's children. God calls us to recognize these gardens He has given us, to invest ourselves in taking care of those, in making those investments prosper under our watch. So how is God calling you to respond today? Maybe He's calling you to get off the couch. Get busy, growing up into that potential that you have. Maybe He's calling you to quit spending so much time at the office while you're neglecting your marriage and your children. Maybe He's calling you to get off the pew and get active in ministry in the body. Is God asking you perhaps this morning, and this is where I want to finish, is God asking you perhaps to finally accept and embrace the work that Jesus did for you on the cross? Accept that, walk in that, cross the line of faith, confess your faith in Jesus, be baptized into Jesus, and to begin to work and to live as a disciple of Jesus. Whatever He's calling you to do, perhaps it's to pray with somebody this morning that's around you, or if you need to respond publicly, that's open as well. But respond to God this morning as we stand together and we worship.